Have you ever had a secret so dark, so deeply buried, that the mere thought of it being exposed made your stomach churn with dread? I'm talking about the kind of secret that could unravel everything. Your relationships, your reputation, your entire sense of self. Well, that's exactly what happened to me when my own brother, the person I trusted most in the world, decided to spill my most shameful truth to everyone I knew. The fallout was catastrophic, leaving me drowning in humiliation, betrayal, and a pain so raw I didn't know if I'd ever recover. How could someone so close to me do something so cruel? And more importantly, how do you rebuild a life when the foundation has been shattered by the one person you thought would always have your back? I'm still picking up the pieces, grappling with the wreckage of what my life used to be, and I need to share this story with you. It's not just about the secret itself. It's about the devastating ripple effects, the way it forced me to confront parts of myself I'd buried for years, and the impossible question of whether forgiveness is even possible. Buckle up for an emotional ride as I lay bare the heartbreak, the anger, and the faint glimmer of hope I'm clinging to. You won't believe the twists this story takes, or the shocking truth I uncovered about my brother and myself along the way. Stick with me, because I'm still figuring out how to move forward, and I could really use your perspective on this mess. I grew up in a sleepy little town called Red Hollow, nestled in the rolling hills of eastern Tennessee. It's the kind of place where time seems to stand still, where the biggest events are the annual county fair and the gossip that spreads like wildfire at the local diner. My childhood was a patchwork of humid summers spent fishing in the creek behind our house, and chilly winters huddled by the wood stove while Mom read us stories. I'm the youngest of 3 siblings. There's my sister Jenna, who's 5 years older and always had a protective streak, and my brother Travis, just 2 years my senior, who was my best friend growing up. Our family wasn't perfect. Dad worked long shifts at the lumber mill and often came home too tired to talk, while Mom struggled with bouts of anxiety that sometimes left her distant. But we were tight-knit in our own way, bound by shared struggles and the unspoken rule that we always looked out for each other. Or at least, that's what I believed. Travis and I were inseparable as kids. He was the daring one, always dragging me into mischief, sneaking out to explore abandoned barns, racing bikes down steep hills, or convincing me to skip school for a day of adventure. I looked up to him like he was a superhero, someone who could do no wrong. Even when we fought, which was often because of his stubbornness and my tendency to overthink everything, we'd always make up by the end of the day, usually over a shared slice of Mom's pecan pie. I trusted him with everything, my fears, my dreams, my dumb teenage crushes. So when I stumbled into the darkest chapter of my life at 17, it was Travis I turned to, knowing he'd keep my secret safe. I never imagined that years later, that same trust would become the weapon that destroyed me. The secret itself is something I've spent over a decade trying to forget, but I can't avoid it anymore, not after what happened. When I was 17, I got caught up in a bad crowd at school, desperate to fit in after years of feeling like the awkward, invisible kid. One night, during a party I shouldn't have been at, things spiraled out of control. I ended up stealing money from a classmate's house, $200 from a jar in their kitchen, to impress the group I was with. I didn't even want the money. I just wanted to prove I wasn't a coward. But the guilt hit me like a freight train the next day. I returned the money anonymously, slipping it into their mailbox with a note apologizing, but the shame never left me. I was terrified of being found out, of my family seeing me as a thief, of losing the little respect I'd earned in our small town. I told Travis about it a few weeks later, sobbing in his truck as we parked by the creek, begging him to keep it to himself. He hugged me, promised he'd never tell a soul, and for years, I believed him. That secret became a weight I carried silently, a shadow that followed me even as I tried to build a better life. Fast forward to my late 20s, and I thought I'd finally put that part of my past behind me. I'm 29 now, working as a mechanic at a garage in Red Hollow, a job I love because it keeps my hands busy and my mind focused. I've got a small house on the edge of town, a fixer-upper I've been slowly renovating, and a tight circle of friends who know me as dependable, hardworking, maybe a little quiet. I've dated here and there, but nothing serious. Honestly, I've always been scared of letting anyone get too close, worried they'd somehow see the stain of that old mistake on me. My family is still a big part of my life, or at least they were. Jenna moved to Nashville for a nursing job, but we talk often, and she visits when she can. Mom and Dad are retired now, spending their days gardening and bickering over trivial things. And Travis? He stayed in Red Hollow, working as a contractor, married with a toddler, always the life of every family gathering. I thought we were closer than ever, especially after he became a dad and started leaning on me for advice, even though I'm the younger one. Life wasn't perfect, but it felt stable, like I'd finally outrun the ghosts of my past. Until the day everything came crashing down. It started innocently enough, or so I thought. Travis and I were at a barbecue at his place last summer, just a casual get-together with some of his buddies and a few of our cousins. The air smelled of grilled burgers and charcoal, and the backyard was alive with laughter and the squeals of kids running around. I was feeling good, sipping a beer and joking with Travis about how terrible we both are at cornhole. But as the night wore on and the drinks kept flowing, I noticed Travis getting louder, more reckless with his words. He started telling old stories, the kind that usually made everyone laugh. Our childhood pranks, the time we got stuck in a tree and Dad had to rescue us. I didn't think much of it at first, just figured he was having fun. But then, out of nowhere, he turned to me with this glint in his eye, a smirk I didn't recognize, and said, "Hey, remember that time you played the big shot thief?" My blood ran cold. I tried to laugh it off, hoping he'd stop, but he didn't. He went on, spilling every detail of that night 12 years ago. The party, the money, the shame, right there in front of everyone. The backyard went quiet, or at least it felt that way to me, as every pair of eyes turned in my direction. I wanted to disappear, to sink into the ground and never come back up. My face burned with humiliation as I stammered something incoherent and bolted for my truck, not even looking back to see Travis's reaction. Driving home that night, my mind was a storm of emotions. I was furious. How could he do this to me, after promising to keep it secret, after knowing how much it haunted me? I was mortified, imagining what everyone at that barbecue must think of me now, picturing the whispers that would spread through Red Hollow like wildfire. But beneath the anger and shame, there was a deeper, sharper pain, betrayal. Travis wasn't just my brother. He was my confidant, my protector, the one person I thought would always have my back. And in a single moment, fueled by what? Alcohol, a need for attention, some hidden resentment, he'd torn that trust to shreds. I got home, slammed the door behind me, and sat on my couch in the dark, replaying the scene over and over. I kept asking myself why. Why would he expose me like that? What had I done to deserve this kind of cruelty from someone I loved so much? The days that followed were a blur of isolation and self-loathing. I called in sick to work, unable to face my coworkers, convinced they'd somehow heard the story already. I ignored texts from friends, even from Jenna, who must have sensed something was wrong but didn't know the details yet. Every time my phone buzzed, I dreaded seeing Travis's name, but he didn't reach out. Not a call, not a message, nothing. That silence hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself. Did he not care about the damage he'd done? Was he too ashamed to face me? Or did he think it was no big deal? I spent hours staring at the walls of my house, memories of our childhood flooding back unbidden. I thought about the time Travis stood up for me when some older kids bullied me at school, how he'd taken a punch to the face just to protect me. I remembered late-night talks in his room when I was struggling with anxiety in high school, how he'd listen without judgment and tell me I'd get through it. How could that same person turn around and humiliate me in front of everyone? The contrast between the brother I knew and the one who'd betrayed me was too much to reconcile, and it left me feeling more alone than I'd ever been. Word spread fast in Red Hollow, just as I'd feared. Within a week, I started noticing the looks, subtle glances at the grocery store, hushed conversations that stopped when I walked by. One of my regular customers at the garage, an older guy I'd always gotten along with, made a snide comment about sticky fingers when I handed him his bill. I laughed it off, but inside, I was crumbling. I felt like a teenager again, that scared 17-year-old kid who'd made a stupid mistake and couldn't escape the shame. I started questioning everything about myself. Was I really the person I thought I'd become? Someone who'd worked hard to be better, to earn respect? Or was I still just a thief in everyone's eyes? The secret I'd buried for so long was now a public scar, and I didn't know how to live with that exposure. I wanted to pack up and leave town, start over somewhere no one knew me, but the thought of abandoning my home, my family, my life, it was too much. I was trapped, caught between the urge to run and the desperate need to reclaim some semblance of normalcy. About 2 weeks after the barbecue, I finally got a text from Travis. It was short, almost curt. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for hours, my thumb hovering over the reply button, torn between rage and a longing to understand. Part of me wanted to ignore him, to let him stew in whatever guilt he might feel, but another part needed answers. I needed to know why he'd done it, whether there was any chance of salvaging what we'd had. So I agreed to meet him at the creek, the same spot where I'd confessed my secret all those years ago. When I got there, he was already waiting, sitting on the tailgate of his truck, looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. I didn't say a word at first, just stood there with my arms crossed, waiting for him to start. And when he did, the conversation was a gut punch I hadn't expected. Travis apologized, his voice low and shaky, but it wasn't the apology I'd hoped for. He admitted he'd had too much to drink that night, that he hadn't meant to hurt me, but then he dropped a bombshell I never saw coming. He told me he'd been carrying resentment toward me for years, a bitterness I'd never noticed. He said he felt like I'd always gotten off easy, that I'd made mistakes like the theft and somehow moved on without consequences, while he'd had to be the responsible one, the one who held things together after Dad's long absences and Mom's struggles. He confessed that telling my secret wasn't just a drunken slip. It was a moment of anger, a way to level the playing field, to make me feel the weight he'd been carrying. I stood there, stunned, as his words sank in. I'd never realized he felt this way, never seen the jealousy or pain beneath his confident exterior. I wanted to yell at him, to tell him how unfair it was to punish me for something I couldn't control, but I also felt a pang of guilt. Had I been so wrapped up in my own struggles that I'd missed his? Had I taken his support for granted all these years? Walking away from that conversation, I felt more confused than ever. I was still angry, still hurt by what he'd done, but now there was this new layer of complexity to wrestle with. I started replaying our entire relationship in my mind, looking for signs I'd missed, moments where I could have been a better brother. I thought about the times he'd bailed me out of trouble, the way he'd always seemed so strong, and wondered if I'd ever really known him at all. I also couldn't shake the realization that his betrayal, while cruel, came from a place of pain. Did that make it any less unforgivable? I didn't know. All I knew was that the bond we'd once had felt irreparable, a shattered mirror that might never reflect the same image again. In the months since that talk, I've been trying to navigate the aftermath, but it's a slow, painful process. I've started going to work again, forcing myself to face the whispers and rebuild my reputation one day at a time. Some people have been kinder than I expected, offering quiet support or simply acting like nothing happened, while others still look at me with judgment in their eyes. I've opened up to Jenna about the whole thing, and she's been a lifeline, reminding me that one mistake doesn't define me, that I'm more than the worst thing I've done. But even her encouragement can't erase the ache of losing Travis's trust, or the fear that I'll never fully escape the shadow of my past. I've seen Travis a few times since our talk at the creek, mostly at family events where we've kept things civil but distant. We don't talk about what happened, don't delve into the deeper issues he hinted at, and I'm not sure if we ever will. Part of me wants to reach out, to try and rebuild something, anything, from the ruins of our relationship, but another part is still too raw, too scared of being hurt again. I keep asking myself if forgiveness is possible, if I can let go of the betrayal without losing a piece of myself in the process. And even if I do forgive him, can we ever be the brothers we once were? Or is that closeness gone forever? I've also been reflecting on my own role in all of this. I've spent so long running from that teenage mistake, letting it define how I see myself, that I wonder if I've given it more power than it deserves. Maybe Travis exposing my secret, as painful as it was, forced me to confront it in a way I never would have on my own. I've started journaling about that night, about the guilt and the shame, trying to make peace with it after all these years. I've even considered talking to a therapist, something I never thought I'd do, just to unpack the weight I've been carrying. But the road to healing feels long and uncertain, and I'm not sure where it will lead. As I sit here now, looking out over the hills of Red Hollow from my porch, I'm still grappling with so many questions. How do you rebuild trust with someone who's hurt you so deeply, especially when they're family? Is it possible to move past a betrayal like this, or will it always linger between us, a silent barrier we can't cross? And what about my own past? Can I truly let go of the shame, or will it always be a part of me, no matter how much I grow? I'm trying to find hope in the small steps, Jenna's support, the quiet days at work, the slow process of forgiving myself. But the future feels like a foggy path I can't quite see. I'm sharing this story with you because I'm still searching for answers, still trying to figure out how to navigate this pain and uncertainty. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you loved, someone you thought would never hurt you? How did you find your way through the hurt, or are you still struggling like I am? Maybe you've had a secret exposed, or carried a burden from your past that you're trying to let go of. How did you make peace with it? I'd love to hear your experiences, your advice, because I believe we can learn from each other's journeys. As I look ahead, I'm left wondering if Travis and I can ever rebuild what we've lost, or if some wounds are just too deep to heal. Thank you for listening to my story, for being here through the heartbreak and the questions. I'm eager to hear your thoughts as I try to figure out what comes next in this messy, painful, and maybe hopeful chapter of my life.